So, I'd like to welcome our next speaker to the stage, a couple of minutes early. Lorne, are you geared up, ready to go? Okay, so Lorne Hurst is a very intelligent man. And I don't say this because he's intellectually smart, although I do happen to know that he is. But I say this because Lorne has realized and will focus today on the women of his world. Very smart. And their importance in the operation of a business which operated parallel to family time at the lake. So welcome, Lorne, and we're looking forward to hearing you.
Well, I'm going to make a little addendum. Yes, I'm from another area in Canada, one of the Dan Tobins. But I have been here most of my life. I put those down. I just started wearing glasses. Mary Margaret Muggs, thank you very much. And I swam in those waters. They were very cold. The waves were at least 15 feet high. But their beach store that was there had a unique smell, and it sold the best licorice, which I can't find anywhere else in the world. And I always try black licorice wherever I go. And I go, no, not it. So that was one definite thing there. I did notice on the list of lodges that Coney Lodge was on there. Quite amazing. I thought it was a tiny little camp, didn't think it really mattered. But this was a story that my mother, I think, was going to talk about. Lori, my mom, was a great sporter and definitely loved all the work and the hard work you've done. So thank you, everybody, for your ongoing. Am I getting a card? Oh, they want me. And I was trying to be nice. I felt this side of the room was getting ignored. You know, the lights over here, you guys. So I'm going to face this way because I notice everyone else has been looking at you all day. So I'm going to go this way. Okay, now I know why. The camera's on. I will for the main presentation face this way. So my mom had been a sport in the museum, thought this was an important thing, and she died suddenly at age 92, really not a moment of illness, and I think she was going to hope to do this presentation. And it's taken a while to get along. Reason why it was suddenly, nobody expected her to go. My father was the gambler and the drinker, so he was going right away for sure, but he lasted to 96, so. Where is this going? Well, Coney Lodge, women. And my whole goal is to show you that, and you know, again, you guys, I don't know whether you planned this. None of us knew what anyone else was saying, but this might dovetail in, so thank you for creating this. It was influences, internal and external, that make a business. And we should have very young people here who are thinking of starting businesses, because this is how it happens, just passion and drive. So, on your left is my grandmother. That was her loving, loving husband in the center, and my mom, this is around age 21. So those are the two women I'm going to be talking about. So, I'm going to give you my prepared speech. Today, I'll speak about two generations of women who shepherded a piece of property on Coney Island, which is part of Kenora, out on the beautiful Lake of the Woods, from a dairy farm at the beginning of the 20th century into a private summer residence before the 21st century. This transition was in part due to influences from the men in their lives, as well as outside forces. Did I go too far? No, went right away. So, what does Coney Lodge look like? This is Kenora from Coney Lodge, so you can see how close it was. That was a great distance. How might you get over to Kenora? You might take the Argyle. It was out on the lake. We all recognize it. But who was creating this? Well, Margaret Elizabeth Ebukhauser was born in 1886. She was the eldest of three girls, born in Truro, Nova Scotia. Their mother died during the childbirth of her youngest sister. The father, who was a simple logger, did not feel he could raise the girls alone, as they were all under the age of 5. In the late 1800s, what did you do? Well, a decision was made to send the three girls to live with different relatives spread out across Ontario. She recounts her early years as being one of a scullery maid and not even being able to finish grade 5. Although her sisters and she did remain in touch by letter, They did not meet again until their adult years. So it was this loss of a strong family unit that may have been the driving force in my maternal grandmother's heart to create a lasting legacy. And that's the feeling I'm trying to show you. There was a desire, a real desire to do something. So here she is here. No, it's not. Doesn't work on the screen. Okay, well, there's only one woman there. The hell with this. Okay. Technology, wait. So, that woman there, remember, just think of her. She had a family, lost the family. And I happened to have done my first year of internship in medicine in Halifax, and they had the last train running to Truro. I have no idea. Anybody who knows me, I'm not really a romantic. I got on the last train to Truro, and it was the most marvelous trip ever. Ugly sightseeing, nothing to see. The train goes through rotten areas now. But to be on an old-fashioned train, I can just imagine getting on the camper train, which I never got to do. Raise of hands, who got on the camper special going to Winnipeg or back from Winnipeg? Anybody ever travel it? 1 or 2 people, 3 or 4. Okay, well, I gotta tell you, in my generation, we didn't travel by train. I don't know it. So I did do the Halifax Truro run, and it was beautiful. I almost wish I had been born another 60 years earlier. So, although she didn't have a formal education, she understood that hard work and perseverance was required to succeed. She became an entertainer in her own right, and for a few years was the manager at Palacamp. Who knows where Palacamp was? Give me a hint. Harbor Island, just downstream, so to speak, from Menaki Lodge. Downstream, I love that. The way she said, oh, downstream. Menaki Lodge was the expensive place. That figures into the story. So, Palacamp stood for Presbyterian Anglican Literary Association. Remember who came here? The English owned it, but the Scots built it. So, did I say that out loud? Okay, gotta watch it. She enjoyed this position, but wished to create her own summer camp. She and her husband-to-be, Ernest Borden de Armand, the distinguished man in the middle, who she met through Westminster. I always want to say Westminster. Is it? Westminster Anglican Church, traveled to Banff, and they weren't even married. Traveled to Banff and as far south as Louisiana, and the reason why I know they got all the way down there looking for sites to purchase is my eldest sister still has the Creole cookbook that they brought back. So I guarantee they really made these trips looking for camps. But in all fairness, just like you were describing, this area was opening up. It was the new frontier. People were coming here. Louisiana had seen better days, she said. So Kenora was it. These were her words. She did write down, though, got a little handwritten note. She goes, I found a quiet portion of the bay, far away from Kuwaitan. It's lovely. Now, Rosemary Robertson and I will tell you, is anybody here from the plane company? Yeah. You know, anyways, there's a picture of a plane on our beach, so we've had a long time with the planes. It's a noisy bay now, but it's so funny to see how times change and things look different. So, strange enough, although they looked all over, it was her husband's business in accounting that was just starting to be prosperous, so they mutually agreed upon it. She will admit this, she was not forced to do it, but mutually agreed upon that it should be close to Winnipeg. And that's how it became Coney, or she chose to purchase here. So now where do you purchase? Well, Menaki was just built, Devil's Gap Lodge was being built, and these were, I know you said you needed 2 years in advance to reserve, but I can tell you, that was for super rich people. And Winnipeg had very few families. I did see somebody out in the audience, and I know that they have one of the gorgeous camps out on the lake, and that would be the names you know on the lake, and their friends in the east and the west who would stay at these places. But in all fairness, most people did not have that kind of wealth, so she created a much more economical camp. And how did she get it? Well, shortly after the First World War, she purchased 8 acres on Coney Island. It was originally a dairy farm in the late 1800s, and at the turn of the century, Colonel Thompson had purchased the farm and was in the process of turning it into a summer residence. Well, Colonel Thompson did not come back from the war. His wife, and this part I don't quite understand. I can't remember when women got to vote, but there was also difficulty owning land, so it reverted back to her family's name, Young. So my grandmother bought it from the Young estate, because after Colonel Thompson passed away, the wife was still alive, and over a 3 to 4 year period they negotiated, and between 1921 and 1924 she bought it for $400, 8 acres on Coney Island. And just to put that, you think that's a small amount of money, and it technically is now. I did do the thinking of this. A working man usually made $10 a week in the 1920s. And so that meant for 4 weeks, here's my math, that's why I'm a doctor, not a banker, that's $40. So in a year you make just over $400. So it was a working man's yearly salary. Well, now a working man might make between $45,000 and $75,000. You can't buy a camp out on the lake. So my answer to your real estate costs are, they need to come down. So what did Coney launch? Oh, you know, I'll finish one last little thing that goes with that. Colonel Thompson, when he passed away, didn't return from the war, his house in Winnipeg, out in Wildwood Park, became the basis of, Jim? Not a golf and country club. Jim Fields, are you out there? You got it, because I think you were. So it became Thompson House, and Young was Young House. There's Wadby, Young, Wadby, Richardson, and, oh my God, I forget the fourth house.
It was a while ago I was there.
Okay, I thought it was only 2-3 years ago, Jim. Okay. So, this is what Hamber House, and I don't know who Hamber is. Good recall. Now, this is showing Coney Lodge property from before the other buildings were put up. But who walks over to Coney Island over the footbridge in the winter and loves walking through? I sure hope lots of people. There's Blueberry Mountain. If you don't get kissed on Blueberry Mountain before you die, you're not going to heaven. So everyone, start walking up. Who remembers the ski jump on Coney Island? Oh, you're all Mount Evergreen people, are you? Okay. So, there was a ski jump on this, and it comes right down into that bay. So, before it became Colonel Thompson's property, it was a farm, a dairy farm, and we still occasionally dig up a horseshoe. We always borrow the Robertson's rototiller, and I break it occasionally because I dig up a horseshoe. So it's amazing, and you can see where, if I walk away from this, and you're not going to get me, that is all underwater now. So the lake level has risen since the beginning. And it was purposely in the dams. When did the dams go in? I never researched it, so I don't know. All I can tell you is that picture is not what it looks like now. So, when they first got it, it was just one big old, oh, see, here's the airplane. This is before on the base of 2nd Street, the planes had anywhere to land. They would show up at our beach. So that's what the lodge looked like. Now, I interviewed my sister, who I think is quite young. I don't think she's older than 30, but she's 15 years older than me, so that doesn't quite work. Yeah, very smart man. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going for another hug with Lisa. So initially on this property, there was 4 large rooms upstairs, 5 downstairs, all with their own fireplace. Very romantic, but absolutely needed because the camp ran from June right through to September. And you know what June can be like, and you definitely know what September can be like. How much did it cost you? Well, I looked back on the books, $7 a week. You got a room and 3 meals a day. Yeah. Over a 30-year period, and we'll just go through some photos, there were improvements in both the sleeping quarters, such as private cabins. So the cost did go up. There it is. That's what it looked like once it started to grow in. And you can see the main cottage and the boathouse. And the boathouse was actually quite enjoyed by people. I rebuilt it recently, not me. I was like Dr. Peyton, I watch my hands. It rocks because it's on cribs, 2 stories, just a little sway in the wind, and it's very peaceful. If you read quietly, you just are lulled into sleep immediately. It's absolutely enchanting. So the rates did go from from $7 up to $30 up to $75, but that was it. In the 50s, it was $75 a week per person. So there's one of the nice little getaway cabins. French cottage. It was named that. I don't know. And the grounds were turned from a farmland into these gorgeous walking areas, and it really is spectacular. And there's people just hanging out. That little swing just finally rusted through about 3 years ago. My kids wouldn't go on it. They said, "Dad, you're going to kill us." I said, "What a way to die." That's actually an eating hall. They expanded it. I'll give you the numbers. Well, actually, I'll give you the numbers right now, won't I? Most of the guests did come from Winnipeg, and we'll go up to that in a minute. But what could you do? There's the tennis court. Now, Mrs. Brown just gave me a great piece of local knowledge. The 2 sides of the tennis court were not equal. I said it was a flat piece of land. It wasn't perfectly flat. So if it started to fade off, they shortened one side, bolstered it up. So one side had a definite advantage. And yes, there'd be badminton courts, a little volleyball, whatever it took. But you can see how just rolling land, you think of Lake of the Woods being all granite and shield. Well, this is why this was a dairy farm. It still is a beautiful piece. So, I'm going to give you a little quiz. Yes, that's our boathouse in the front. The Rosemary, your mom and dad bought from who? Who is the white boathouse? Next one.
Mrs. Wixon in 1944.
1944, Mrs. Wixon. And anybody other than Rosemary and Jim, who can answer what the third boathouse is? Relatively big. It's a giveaway. What? 4 longs. Okay. Have we had a story about the Grace Ann recently? Right. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. When the Grace Ann got sold the first time, where did all the wood, because that didn't burn down, the fire at the boathouse was a small one, where did the wood go from this boathouse when it was torn down? It built the Tower Motel. Yeah, almost sure. Anybody own it now? Tower Motel? Can you verify that? Pretty certain. The diving tower out there was definitely a lot of fun, and Ms. Brown said only adults were allowed to go on the dock. I'll tell you, that was during the day when somebody was watching. My sister told me that there were countless people going in, sometimes without bathing suits. I said, "Oh, not in black and white times, you didn't do that stuff." So, again, I was a color baby and had a phone and had this, and I don't know this type of world. So I would have loved if my mom had told the story, but all my life, my mom would never tell a nasty thing about anybody. So if I'd ask something, she'd look at me and she'd go, "I'll tell you when you're older." The last time she said that, I was 52. She went, "I'll tell you." So, how many people could stay here? It was 8 acres. There were the main lodge, these nice little cottages, and we would have minor tents because it became so successful. 125 people a week had room and board here. I don't know. I crack up when we have 26 relatives coming in. I'm just dying for them to leave. So, it should be stated that most of the activities were created by the guests themselves. This might include here's the tennis. Okay, I'll take it back. Oh yes, I was going to say most of the guests came from Winnipeg. When I looked through the ledgers, I found very few people coming from Kenora over to the island. You were probably going to Nestor Falls or more of a distance. You wanted to make it a treat. Some of the people, not just some, many of the people actually came as singles, but came back a year or 2 later as newlyweds after meeting their partners. These repeat guests initially came for 1 week, but the ledger shows that many of them started staying for 2 weeks with an expanding family. So romance was definitely big on Coney Lodge. Somebody said, "Yeah, I heard that." So it could be quiet reading in the lending library or playing piano. We still have that piano in the cottage, and it keeps its tune pretty well. About every 4 summers we get the piano tuner to come. None of us in our present family now play, but my father was an unbelievable pianist. We just hated doing it. So, what do we got? The lending library, outside activities. You saw pictures of lawn bowling, and here's lawn golf. That's looking back right over to Tunnel Island. The St. Joe's Hospital is right behind all those trees, just to put you in perspective. And again, looking to the right of that picture, you'll see town itself. This is now all overgrown with trees. My dad was a great planter. This shows you by 1956 how things had changed a little bit. Those are real numbers showing you that as a lodge goes through its time, you either have great ability to keep a business going. So when you say, oh, many of the places have gone away, it takes time, energy, and commitment to keep a business running. So you can see the numbers coming down. That's not 28,000. Well, it is actually 28,000. That was pretty good. You know, when I first looked at this, I actually thought she had made 2,800. Okay. So my mom did do well. I don't know why she sold the thing. Okay. So we look at it, and the fortunes of Kenora were growing with this. There was thriving building materials because everybody out on the lake was building. So what were some of the other companies that I remember hearing the names of from my mom? Oh, if only I could get that from Lakeland Dairies. The vegetable market, interestingly enough, reinvented. Well done. It's come back on the waterfront, and I'll tell you, that is fantastic, the vegetable market. Love going there. Red Rose Flour, don't think it got reinvented. Reused and repurposed was the fish market, now known as Blue Heron. My eldest sister used to really enjoy rowing across the lake to go to the post office, box 618, and now she likes going to the town hall, just because she could still remember the doors. She loves pulling up the doors, because that was her freedom. She got to go on the rowboat by herself. Very exciting. So, it took many people to run this camp, and the ledgers show that most of the boat boys, who always were up to some shenanigans, did come from Kenora. I'm wondering if there's any of you gentlemen out there. The waitress staff actually fulfilled large duties. According to my sister, the boat boys had more fun than work, but the girls worked amazingly hard because it ran from 6 or 7 in the morning right through to at least 10 o'clock at night. There was always somebody asking you for something. The people themselves could go up to Blueberry Hill and pick blueberries. We had red currants and still do on the property. Raspberries, which just finally died off, but Rosemary has a few canes left, so she's going to help me get back in. So people would pick the fruit, and there would be pies made that night. So those were the 2 jobs that did get looked at in the winter. Pastry chef, meat chef, because meals were a highlight. There were not that many other activities, that people had to make their own fun, and I think that's what made it a family camp. It was not for somebody going, oh yes, we're going yachting. They might put people in a launch and go close to Devil's Gap, around some of the nice cottages. But I asked Shirley, did anyone ever go down to Manchin Mine or any of the mines down the lake? She goes, oh no, that's too far, too much petrol. So, you know, you just wouldn't go that distance. So, there were camp rules. I'm going to see if it comes up. Oh, okay, just to show you the camp, there's the cooking camp. Underneath the stove there, those were kept for pickling beets, all of those things. There was an ice house down on the beach, so we didn't have ours own. The Forlongs had one, but down on the beach there was a communal ice house, if I understand, and you would make the trip down to get the ice, and then it would go in these freezer buckets to keep whatever cold once you'd cut it, because you prepped the meals and then you cooked. You went quick. So what were the camp rules? Well, you definitely had to obey them. Otherwise, you weren't asked or allowed to come back the next year. So it really was, the main one was being quiet. Somewhere in there, it should say, oh, please tell me I see it. Oh yes, guests retiring after 11:30. 11:30, I always saw black and white pictures meant you went to bed when the sun went down. So party, party, party. And that's what I think happened there. And again, my grandmother was an entertainer. She loved this life. It became a well-oiled machine. But in the early 50s, when Margaret's health and I take that back. In the early 40s, when Margaret's health was failing, just as she was turning 50 years old, and remember, there was no socialized medicine, so her diabetes, hypothyroidism, all of that started to take its toll. And so here she was a year before she started doing less. There she is now pretty much sitting. Once she got to the camp in June, she sat, she did the books, did whatever, but didn't do anything active. And so my mom took over. Now, this is a beautiful picture. I just love looking at this, because here is somebody who was an only child, and she saw her mom failing, and out of commitment, not out of a desire to have something like my grandmother, but out of commitment of a child to a parent, said, I'll run it. Actually, it was under her that it became the most successful, but that wasn't just her doing, it was also the time. People had more money now. You know, the 40s and 50s, people were making more money. So how did they get down there? Well, originally, the people came by rail. That was the main way. There was a bit of a highway, but it was poor. So they came on the number 2 camper special. They would show up, and then they would ring 16 black. Anybody remember telephone number 16 black? Really? Well done, man. I remember getting away with 86181. You know, I didn't have to have the 468. Really upset when I had to add those extra digits. And then the highway started to expand. So although in the old days, Main Street, yes, I see you. I'm going to ignore her, but I'm seeing her. She's at 3 minutes. Was that 30 minutes you said? Okay, yeah. So 44, Highway 44, right through the White Shell, and it was at least a 4-hour trip. And then you would take the camp launch over. Let's take a look at that launch. That's how you'd arrive. That's kind of a pleasant way to get on the lake. There's what it's looked like. You're walking up those peaceful way, and there's the flood of 1950. And that was when things, my dad said, this is getting harder to do. You know, you didn't have as many guests. Are you sure you want to go through with this? So, a non-supportive husband. First husband was very helpful, loving and doting. Second husband came back from the Second World War. You know, he went and did his specialty down at the Mayo Clinic. Everybody goes to the Mayo Clinic. Okay. It was really the only thing close. Minneapolis was technically close. And so he said, I'd really rather you didn't run the business. So in 1956, that was the last entrance. So 28,000 down to 200, a 90% drop. Heart had gone out of it. Now, the other thing is she had 3 children. I was just about ready to come. I'm 2 years later. And so it was, my dad just wanted the social scene. There was, and it still is, a very big social scene on the lake. So if your goal is to have fun when you come to the lake, it's hard to run a business. And anybody who has a business out the lake, I'll tell you, summer, the rest of us are there to enjoy, they're working. They're working hard. And they're working before you get up to start having your meal. And so when you go to one of these tourist camps and you go, where's my sauce? Where's my, gravy? Just step back and realize these guys put in a lot of time and work just so you could be sitting there. That's my little spiel for camp ownership. So I'll finish by saying what's happened now. I'm going to get teary. Sorry. Regardless, this could happen, sorry. The intrinsic love of land and water that surrounds us was instilled to 3 of her 4 children. One sister lives down in Phoenix and she can't even come back in July, it's too cold. My eldest sister and her daughter have a summer place on Gun Club Island, and their son has built out on Shoal Lake on Dominique Island, hand-built cedar cabin. My brother Brian Hurst, who was backcountry hiking, looking for a remote cabin near Bruce Lake, passed away in the fall of 2014. He was caught in an early snowstorm. He now rests in the area we all truly love. So, this is what the camp looked like. Sorry about that. And this is what it looks like now. So I'll just go back. Same beach, different people. Black and white, color. And our little pot of gold is my grandmother's legacy. Thank you.